So, Katy, the last time that we had you on Problematic Women was 2021, and it was a very different time.
Are we recording?
For all of us. We're recording, yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Because I think that I was on in between that.
Well, so you were on the Daily Signal podcast, I think, twice in between that. So you're just a regular.
You guys
here.
have so much media, I can't even keep track.
Good. All the podcasts.
All the media.
All the podcasts. Well, and when we had you on last time, we had you share a little bit of your story. You have a wild story. You were the founder and president of Them Before Us. You have 3 books out now, right?
I have 3.
3 books.
Wow.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Right.
Wow. That's gotta feel a little surreal.
Well, and the good news is I had help with all of them. So the first 2 I co-authored with Stacey Manning, who is the wordsmith queen of my entire writing history. First one was Them Before Us, Why We Need a Global Children's Rights Movement. And that frames every marriage and family issue through the lens of put kids first.
Yep.
And then in the course of sort of marketing that book and sharing it and spreading the word about the nonprofit Them Before Us, I travel a lot in the United States. I travel internationally. People find out that I live in Seattle and that I have children and that they go to public school. And they're like, and how do your children not have purple hair? Explain that to me. Why haven't you left? And so I answered that question so many times. I was like, Stacey, can we just get our parenting philosophy down in a book? So I could be you can read the book. Everything you need to know is in there. So book number 2 is Raising Conservative Kids in a Woke City.
Wow.
And it's just pretty much how do you instill a biblical conservative Christian worldview in your children when everything is lying to them.
Yep.
And then our 3rd book just came out last month, Pro-Child Politics. And that one I had help with, massive help, because I'm not the author. I am just the editor. And I conscripted 19 subject matter experts to write about every major political issue through the lens of what if we put kids first?
Which in some ways, I feel like that might be harder to get 19 people to all write and stay somewhat on their topic and follow the assignment.
Yeah, in 5 weeks. I was like, also, I need this in 5 weeks. That's okay. And also, you have to follow this very rigid formula that you cannot deviate from in any one week. And they all did, and they're incredible.
That's
and the
amazing.
book is even better than I thought it would be.
Wow. Well, congratulations.
Thanks.
What a success. I'm excited today because we're going to talk about the book, and we're going to talk about that kind of overarching topic of pro-child politics and policies specifically, and how we go about achieving them, and what we have seen in recent history in relation to policies that are not so great for kids.
There's so many options.
So many options. But this is a really personal issue for you, Katy, because as a child, you were no stranger to divorce. You were no stranger to same-sex relations. Could you just briefly kind of share your story and why protecting kids within policy is something that not only as a mom you're passionate about, but because of your own story you're passionate about?
And I share this really more for just I kind of have an insight into all these different worlds, not because I'm the fatherless daughter raised by lesbians, or whatever, however you want to clickbait that up, which a lot of people have. I mean, I promise.
She knows.
No, you Google Katy Faust and it'll be woman with 2 mothers, campaigns for traditional marriage. And I'm kind of.
Missing some details.
Really close. But yeah, my parents divorced when I was 10, so I understand the instability and the volatility that can follow a divorce for kids. My father dated and remarried, so I understand the complexities of blended families and introducing new partners and new spouses to a child's life, sometimes new siblings as well. After the divorce, my mom repartnered with a woman, and they've been together ever since. So actually, I've got a very long history of loving and being in relationship with both her and her partner. They've been a huge part of my childhood, adolescence, young adult, young married, young mother, all the way into where I am now, the station of mother of teens, and still very close and connected to them. So, every now and then I'll get an angry lesbian activist, yelling at me on Twitter, whatever, you're homophobe, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, you adorable little thing. I have been living with lesbians since way before you were born.
Dang.
It's not, none of this comes from a position of animus or hatred or phobia or anything. It comes from the very obvious, common sense, natural law verified, research approved conclusion that children fare best when they're raised by their married biological mother and father. After I got married, I worked at the largest Chinese adoption agency in the world. So I have looked at it from the perspective of what do you do to heal the wounds of children who have lost their first family? Yeah. Then I became a mother myself to 3 wonderful children through biology. Then I became a mother through adoption for our youngest. So I understand both from an institutional level as well as a personal level that adoption is redemptive. And I can't fully compensate for everything that my son has lost. That adoption is a just society's response to children who have lost their parents. But we should never commercially incentivize and promote mother and father loss in a child's life because, you mess with the child's early years through divorce or father absence or mother absence or reproductive technologies, sperm and egg donation, surrogacy. You mess with their whole life. Yeah. A lot of the times what you're doing is you are saddling lifelong loss and struggle on tiny little shoulders that a lot of the time didn't have to bear that if the adults in their life were willing to do hard things.
Wow. I love the terms you use, the natural law, biology. I had kids through biology. Like that is so powerful and not something, we're about to dive into a conversation on kind of the politics of today and what's impacting children, like you said, those most vulnerable. And I love how you quantify it with that science backing because not enough people are doing that. And I mean, it's natural. Like you said, it's a natural thing.
Well, and I would say the left does that all the time. That is their MO. They always pick out the example that they want to highlight. They humanize that victim. They've decided, here's the victim. We're going to humanize them. We're going to tell the very long, drawn-out backstory so that you sympathize with them and you empathize with them. And then what they do is they say, now, since you agree that this person is a victim, all of the policy needs to protect them. You need to become their ally, and this needs to drive the conversation. So actually, properly identifying the victim is critical, obviously in the marriage and family arena, but also in other areas of politics as well. And I would say that the right has actually erred in terms of it has created an error by leading with research, leading with statistics, leading with natural law, instead of leading with story. And so we have tried to really accentuate and highlight the real life stories of children who are harmed when we get policy wrong. So I don't think that stories are the whole, I don't think lived experience is the most important metric, but it is the currency of our day, and we have underutilized it to advance very good conservative policy.
We're in like the first 5 minutes and we're already challenging the status quo, which is kind of what we are about here on Problematic Women.
There's so many problems in this room. There's like 1, 2, 3.
It hasn't even been 5 minutes yet. But if you're joining us today, welcome, Problematic Women. We're happy you're here. Make sure to drop us a rating, review, share with your friends, other problematic women. Get the word out there because we are really trying to challenge the status quo with awesome guests. And we're just so excited for our conversation with you today.
Yeah, thanks. Katy Faust, the founder of Them Before Us, and I'm Virginia Allen. We're here at the Daily Signal. And this is Kristen Eikammer, who works at the Heritage Foundation.
We didn't really do an intro.
Really I'm like, you should probably say our names. But Katy, one of the topics as we jump into tea time, which is when we talk all things politics and policy, but we have to keep it classy here, so hence tea. One of the topics that we've touched on briefly already that I think maybe if we can call it your gateway policy topic would be that of marriage.
Yes.
And that of, okay, what do kids actually need? Because I think in our culture, because we're such an individualistic culture and marriage is celebrated as it should be because it's a beautiful thing, but it's very much thought of as, are the adults happy? And are you finding love? And is that love making you happy? And kids are sort of a little bit of an afterthought in that conversation of marriage, and you really challenge this narrative.
Yes. So it has not always been this way. I think that we used to have the understanding of marriage as an institution, right? Something that existed for the benefit of society, something with some structure to it for a reason. And through, I would say, a lot of different cultural and legal changes, it has moved away from what it has historically been, which is the most child-friendly institution the world has ever known. And it has transformed into just one more of the options of adult fulfillment, one more vehicle for adults to get the validation that they are looking for. And unfortunately, when you see that transformation away from a child-centric understanding of marriage towards an adult-centric understanding of marriage, children are victimized. So there's a lot of reasons for that. We can go into as much reason as you want for it. But yeah, like we're at the place now where marriage, which has historically been the institution that united the two people to whom children have a natural right, and thus one of the main instruments for their flourishing, has now deteriorated. And it is often something that is going to take children backwards in terms of some of the family forms that we are approving of, rather than towards a life of security and thriving and healthy identity formation.
When you say family forms we're approving of, I assume you mean cohabitation,
yes.
Same-sex marriage,
Easy divorce.
Easy divorce.
Yeah, single motherhood by choice, all the different forms of third-party reproduction that's taking place, moving towards polygamy. So, there's a variety of ways that children can lose their mother or father today. A lot of times we call that modern family, but modern family is really just code for child loss. Right? The child had to lose something to be in that family because an adult desire, something they wanted, their feelings or their identity, was elevated above the child's fundamental rights and well-being.
And can you dig a little more into the rights of a child? Because I mean, I'm a childless woman, but I haven't ever thought about that before, how there are innate almost child rights that they have that aren't discussed when you're making those adult decisions on, are you going to stay in a marriage? Are you going to get married? IVF, even, all of that. So can you dig a little more into those rights?
Yes. So a lot of people are kind of bewildered when you're talking about child rights. But the truth is, especially if you're on the conservative side of the aisle, especially if you're Christian, and especially if you are pro-life, you already understand that children have a fundamental natural right to life. And that is an inalienable right. And it is something we need to protect and advance, even if our civil laws don't recognize it. And we are standing atop a pretty rich history of people arguing for equal justice, equal protection on the basis of natural rights. I mean, this is the foundation on which Martin Luther King Jr. advanced equal protection for our Black brothers and sisters, even though several states didn't recognize it. And so this idea of a natural right comes out of the tradition of natural law. This is something that's pretty well familiar to a lot of your Catholic listeners, for sure. Definitely familiar with those who kind of grew up in the elite sort of Ivy League academic world. It's not something that a lot of people, just the ordinary moms and dads, certainly outside the Beltway, might be familiar with. But children do have a right to life. And according to that same natural law system of discovery, they also have a natural right to be known and loved by both people responsible for their existence. And even though it sounds strange and foreign to us, that natural right is actually recognized in the most widely ratified treaty in the world, the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, which lists that primary right directly after the recognition that children have a right to life, to not be killed. Now, they would not necessarily apply that to preborn children, but once the child is born, they have a right to life, and they have a right to both parents. And that's reiterated in about 5 different articles. So even though it's strange to our ears, that recognition is woven throughout sort of the common law expression in most countries throughout the world. So it is real, whether or not we've heard of it or like it. And the amazing thing is protecting and defending that fundamental natural right to both mother and father exempts children from so many of the social ills that we are trying to beat back today, whether it's through government programs or nonprofit startups or hundreds of billions of dollars that we throw at issues like teen homelessness or child poverty or teen suicide and depression or high incarceration rates. If you defended children's right to their mother and father, you would decimate nearly all of those social ills.
Yeah, I love that. That's just so foundational. It's so foundational. And I loved, you spoke at an event at the Heritage Foundation earlier today, and one of sort of the myths that you brought up was this notion of, well, kids need love, and there's which is true, and there's truth in that. But we have a little bit of a mindset in the Western world of just, well, we need to make sure that kids are in a loving home, and if they're in a loving home, that's really all they need, whatever that looks like. Yeah. And you disagree with that.
Yeah. Well, I totally want children to be loved.
Yeah.
And I want children to be safe.
Yeah.
And we don't have to speculate about the conditions that we need to put in place in their own household to drive the likelihood that they actually will be safe and loved.
Yeah.
We have been doing family structure research for decades, and we know the conditions that lead to their safety, their love, their maximum investment, and it is when they're in the home of their married biological mother and father. And so this idea that, biology doesn't matter, love makes a family. No, that's really just a permission slip for adults to do whatever they want, and in the name of their own sexual fulfillment or supposed love of the child, that they think that that's going to be a replacement for things like biology or things like a mother and a father in the home, when that's a lie.
Yeah.
Like this, a lot of the narratives, a lot of the cultural mantras that we repeat, things like, well, if the adults are happy, the kids will be happy. Or kids need two parents, not biological parents, just two parents. Or kids just need to, love makes a family. They don't need a mother and father. If that was the case, then children who are raised by their mother and, for example, her cohabiting boyfriend would be doing great because they have two parents, they have a mother and a father. The adults are happy, so the kids should be happy. But
research doesn't show that.
Yeah. Problematic women at home. Feel free to pause this and Google the words mother's boyfriend right now. Google mother's boyfriend. Pause. Take your time. Okay, you back? How'd that go for you? What did you see when you looked up mother's boyfriend? Yes, that's right. You saw thousands and thousands of pages of the most disturbing headlines about child abuse, child rape, child filicide, because unfortunately, love doesn't make a family.
Yeah.
Biology, gender, marriage, protecting children's fundamental natural right to their mother and father actually places them in the homes where they're the least likely to experience abuse and neglect, including an unrelated adult, especially a man, in the child's home. Statistically, means that they are living with the person who is the most likely to assault and kill them.
And we see that in nature too, not to go there really, but
this is it. This is right.
Leopards, they are very territorial, and if something were to happen to a mother leopard, then the male that was mating with her would kill her cubs because it is a threat. I might have not explained that perfectly well, but
lions do the same thing.
Where they'll kill the offspring of others because they're a threat. And I'm not saying that that's going to happen in mother's boyfriend situations, but there is absolutely abuse that has been. Again, you just looked it up, right?
There's a nature nurture.
So there is actually a term for this, and it is called the Cinderella effect.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So this is so widely known and acknowledged that they actually have a name for it. The disadvantage, the lack of investment, even the danger that an unrelated adult poses to a child. So an evolutionary biologist would explain this by saying, well, there's no advantage to unrelated adults investing time and resources and protection in something that isn't going to carry on their lineage. Unfortunately, the animal kingdom will act that out instinctually. We just try to paper over it with phrases like love makes a family.
Dang, that was fire. That was so good. But I kind of want to dig a little bit deeper because we've seen a lot of narratives from the left, like love is love, all of that. And something I found really interesting just in recent days, obviously we have a presidential election coming up. We were joking about it before. You were like, what are you doing? And I'm like, just surviving.
It's rowing the boat. 3 more weeks.
But Kamala has kind of pivoted a lot with who she's branding to, what her identity is. Obviously, she's kind of seeing what works, what doesn't. And what I found most interesting is how she's now kind of flipped the script on men. For like the last decade, we were talking about this earlier, Virginia, the last decade, the left has demonized men, emasculated them even. And now they're coming out with this commercial where it's like, I'm a man. And then they insert meme here, right? Insert meme here, bear hugs. And I'm not scared of a woman. And I'm just like, is this going to work? No. First of all, no. But it's like, that is what we're kind of up against, is this party that has kind of redefined gender, redefined love and biology. And now they're trying to, bring it back a little bit just to win an election. It's scary. And it hurts, going back to pro-child politics, it hurts those most vulnerable.
Yeah. You watch those ads that they're putting in, have you met a man? Do you know what one looks like? Have you seen one before? Because they don't sit on tailgates like that.
Right.
All this man he's never met a tailgate before in his life. But unfortunately, I think that the left gets humans wrong. And because they get humans wrong, they get men wrong, they get women wrong. And I don't want to say I'm fine with that, but I'm like, it's not necessarily my problem. But when you get humans wrong and it means that you get children wrong, that's when it becomes my problem. Right? That's when I'm like, you cannot lie about their identity, their bodies, their life, their family, their minds. You cannot steal their resources. You can't co-opt their opportunities. You can't decrease their security in the name of advancing whatever, sexy ideology it is that's going to get you invited to whatever cocktail parties or elected to whatever office. No. Like, unfortunately, the left misunderstands human nature. And as a result, they are misidentifying the victims in a lot of these cases and a lot of these policies. And those victims are almost always kids.
Yeah. Well, Kristen, I know one thing that you wanted to chat about that honestly, I feel like it's been a race to the top of like who can talk more about it between Republicans and Democrats is IVF.
Yes.
And it's been this fascinating, like all of a sudden it was like IVF is the headline.
Yeah.
And both Trump and Kamala Harris have tried to come out on top as like, I am the champion of IVF. And I think a lot of Americans aren't even that familiar with what it is because unless you're kind of faced with that as an adult of choosing to go down that route, probably most people just aren't super familiar with the details. But so maybe let's take a minute and like talk about like what is IVF and then what are there moral implications, ethical qualms? Because it's not clear now between parties. Like the lines are very blurred.
Well, there is a lot to be said about IVF, and there's church teaching on it, depending on where you attend. Obviously, the Catholic Church has a lot to say about this. They have been kind of out ahead of the game for a long time, I would like to say. But also recently, the Southern Baptists have come out with very strong statements against IVF and at least the excesses and abuses of IVF. So you've got religious authorities. You do have ethical authorities that are speaking to a lot of the concerns, the ethical concerns of this. I'm going to talk to you about it from the perspective of child protection because, that's my lane. That's what I know. And unfortunately, from the perspective of child protection, protecting their fundamental rights, specifically their right to life and their right to their mother and father, IVF is not child-friendly technology. I've been talking about this ever since 2018 when I started Them Before Us. And people just assumed I was Catholic because nobody talked about it, especially in Protestant circles. Now, thankfully, I think that a lot of pro-lifers and a lot of Christians have woken up to the fact that this industry of big fertility, because it is an industry. This is not a benevolent nonprofit helping people get needy children into well-screened and vetted homes. That's not what this is. This is an industry not just about helping infertile couples have babies. This is an industry about on-demand designer babies shipped worldwide. And the way that you get those designer babies into the hands of whoever has the money and means to acquire them is to do it on the backs of lots of dead babies. So people are shocked, when I go speak at conferences or interview to find out that big fertility is responsible for the death of more embryonic children than Planned Parenthood. By the numbers, if you want to talk about the two fronts and protecting children's right to life, big fertility is the bigger culprit here. But beyond that, even if you are the very, very rare embryo that makes it through the IVF process alive, through the screening, through the freezing, through the thawing, through the transfer, through the sex selection, through the genetic testing, and you get to be one of the lucky few that's implanted, and then the one that makes it through the process alive, if you are that 3 to 7% of the embryos that were created in vitro, in glass, IVF, then you still might lose your right to your mother or father. Because anywhere from 30 to 60,000, that's probably 1/3 to 2/3 of the children created through IVF every year are going to lose their mother or father in the process. So this industry of big fertility, primarily through IVF, but also through things like sperm and egg donation, are child victimizers. And that is inconvenient for those of us that would like to have a political win on the topic. Unfortunately for you, children are not your political pawn. And we don't put our finger in the wind and figure out, how is this going to test? You protect kids. We protect kids. And the party comes back to us. We don't go to them.
That, so like just full candid here. I was on a run this morning and I had to stop when I heard that 3 to 7% statistic, because
shout out to Emma Waters here at the Heritage Foundation, who is the person that has dug into so many of those stats. Keep going.
No, and it just, that's not something you talk about. And in an interview, I can't remember the podcast, but you kind of went on and you were like, some of them are obviously used, and then some of them go in the freezer, and you're like, once a kid goes in the freezer, they might not come out. They're probably not coming out. Yeah. I thought that was just so powerful.
And the image that it puts in your brain is just
Virginia's like checking me a little bit.
No. I mean, if a child, a life that is fully capable of becoming a life, sitting in a freezer,
so insane.
Frozen orphanages.
Yeah.
Oh. Wow. My heart.
Yeah. This is the right response. Yeah. This is the response that everybody can and should have. And I will say, are having. There weren't a whole lot of even pro-life organizations that were thinking about IVF when I started this 5 years ago. Honestly, now all of them are. Like Lila Rose talks about it, Kristen Hawkins talks about it, Seth Gruber talks about it. There's another great pro-life nonprofit called Created Equal that has taken this and just run with it. Abby Johnson wrote the life chapter in our pro-child politics book. She addresses both abortion and IVF as victimizers of children's right to life. So I do think that those of us that are really aware of what's happening in the world, kind of behind the curtain, and involved in messaging on culture and crafting policy, I think that most of us the veil has been lifted.
Yeah.
But it will be a while before that trickles down to the ordinary mom and dad. And also, it will take some political courage for politicians to take it on.
I was going to say, this feels like a really long road. I mean, obviously, the road to having Roe v. Wade overturned, very, very long road. This almost feels like it could be longer, because right now you have both parties who really aren't willing. I think there's a lot of Republicans who are very uncomfortable with it. They're not comfortable speaking strongly against it because it has become, at least in this election, kind of a flashpoint.
Yeah.
And like, this could be a long time before people can look really honestly at this and say, what on earth are we doing? Yeah. Stop this.
This is a very good example of who's the victim.
Yeah.
If you think that the sweet, infertile, heterosexual couple that lives next door is the victim, then they can and should be able to have whatever they want.
Yeah.
But if you think that children who are screened out of existence because they are the wrong sex, or they have the wrong eye color, or they didn't quite make the grade, they only got a B grade instead of an A grade embryo, and they were donated to research or thawed and discarded, if you believe they're the victims, then actually it becomes a little more clear. So we really do need to properly identify the victims in every case, but I think especially this case. And to me, that is the only path forward in terms of creating the clarity and building the courage for people to feel like they can speak up on it, even if they know somebody in their life who might like to avail themselves to this technology, even if they have themselves. We, thank God, have incredible supporters and followers who have used this technology and said, I lost children. I didn't understand the implications. I still have 5 that are frozen, but I'm now 47. I can't transplant them. I won't give them away, but I won't thaw and discard them. I'm totally stuck. I don't know what to do.
Right.
So I think parents that have been through this process are very often the most clear about how hard it is to undergo these kinds of treatments without victimizing kids.
I'm going to ask a question, and I'm still in the discovery process of all of this, right? Because this is not my lane. But is there a world where IVF doesn't make that child the victim?
So a lot of people are like, is it ethical? I'm like, what is ethics? From my very lay person's perspective, ethics means you have to appeal to some kind of outside authority. So if you're going to your church teaching, some of your churches are going to say, no, it's never ethical. It's not ethical for a technician to preside over the creation of a child. That always has to be in the hands of God. You are taking life into your own hands. That is outside of the realm of, your ownership, your zone. I think a lot of Christian ethicists or Christian theologians would say that there is a sacred triad biblically. If you want to look at the whole corpus of biblical counsel and scripture, you see that sex, marriage, and babies always go together. And if you separate any one from the other two, you are going to get horrible fallout, and I would say very direct child harms when you separate babies from sex, sex from babies, sex from marriage, marriage from babies. I mean, like all of that creates generations of child victims. So it would be very hard to make the case that IVF is permissible because it breaks up that triad. Can you do IVF in ways that don't victimize any child's right to life or right to their mother and father? The answer is yes. But it is so cost prohibitive. Virtually nobody does it. And you have to work against your own fertility doctors if you want to try it.
Interesting. Okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
A lot of layers there.
No, for sure. And I mean, the Catholic Church, like this popped in my head, the Catholic Church, it's all about, the man, the woman, they create the baby together. It's representative of our, the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. It all makes sense. Thank you for answering that. I hope that wasn't too...
No, that's a great question.
Yeah, no, it's just,
really good
it's a hard thing to wrap your head around, but a lot of these political... things we're seeing in the news are hard to wrap your head around.
No shortage right now. And Katy, I want to thank you for diving into that topic because it is one that right now is just, it shouldn't be so controversial, yet here we are. So thanks for diving deep into that. And
well, I will say I've benefited a lot from Heritage's work on this.
Go, Emma.
Go, Emma. She has been such a gift to me and to our work, such an amazing source. I can be like, Emma, where's that article that you wrote talking about how IVF is not going to necessarily reverse the fertility decline and that it's not a solution to the population winter that we're about to face? I mean, like, here's a couple options for you. I mean, like, she's such a godsend.
Yeah,
she's such a godsend.
She's so great.
Yeah.
We need to have her back on the show.
Get that woman on here.
Yeah, she's awesome. Well, let's chat about some of the other big issues that we are seeing a lot in the news. One that caught my attention specifically this week is there is all of this hoopla among specifically polling around black men and looking at, okay, how is Harris polling with black men, which she's still getting like 74% of the vote among black men. But that's down pretty significantly from what Joe Biden got, from what Barack Obama got. And so there's this little bit of freak out on the Harris campaign. We need to do something. Now, they won't admit that, but their actions show that. So they have rolled out this policy to say, okay, if Harris is elected, we are going to offer $20,000 loans to black entrepreneurs. We're going to make policies around changes in policies around cryptocurrency, and we're going to legalize marijuana. Which personally, I'm like, if I was a black man, I'd just be so offended of like, you're bribing. You want my vote because you say you're going to give me money and drugs.
Think I'm a pothead?
And drugs.
Is that what you think? You're calling me a pothead.
You're calling me a pothead.
Yeah.
And those loans, by the way, are forgivable, which means they're free.
Yeah.
And so it's free money that has to come from somewhere. And so when we talk about policies that affect kids and people, I'm like, all right, so right away we know that's going to increase inflation because anytime the government starts handing out free money, someone has to pay for that.
Right.
That comes out of our pockets. And then you want to make a whole society a little bit lazier. Well, give them more drugs, give them more pot, not make them more dependent on the government. They need more government handouts.
And it's not like, pot strengthens marriage or fortifies relationships.
No, not
or,
quite.
Makes you want to shoulder responsibility voluntarily on behalf of others.
Yeah. Sure.
Which is really what the world needs in terms of masculinity. So yes, that's not going to be good for men or children.
Well, I was fascinated to see, I want to play a clip from MSNBC. This is Representative Stephen Harsford. He's a Democrat from Nevada, and he sort of unpacks a little bit of like, hey, this is the plan, and then we're going to play a second clip that's his justification for kind of the why behind it, which I just found fascinating. So let's go ahead and roll clip 1.
It's about providing $20,000 for givable loans to small businesses and entrepreneurs, people who have great ideas but who need help getting that business off the ground and to a good start. And then once that business is operating, providing $50,000 worth of deductions in that first year so that business continue to be successful.
All right, and let's go ahead and roll that second clip where he's sort of justifying this plan that Harris has rolled out, clip 2.
It's time that they listen to us and understand that we want the same thing as anyone else. We want opportunities for good wages. We want opportunities to acquire education and skills and training. We want to be able to retire with dignity and security. And we want to be able to leave a legacy to the next generation, our children and our community after a lifetime of work, to be able to have something to show for what we've done here on this earth.
So yes and amen to that. We all want that. And I want that for him just as much, for anyone. But I constantly find this when you talk conservative and leftist policy is like, the end goal is often the same of like, yes, that prosperity, having an inheritance to leave your kids and your grandkids and something that you're proud of. The path to get there, very different on the theories of the path to get there.
Well, you know what this makes me think of is the whole Black Lives Matter, right? The whole pandering to a racial group, right? Seeing you primarily as a racial identity. And Black Lives Matter was the organization that was sort of the flagship, right? That's the tip of the spear in terms of that movement for equity, racial equity. Back in the day where they still had their full statement on like family formation up online, which they took down after some scrutiny.
Yep.
They talked about Black mothers, Black community. They talked about Black trans women. They never once said Black men or Black fathers. They didn't even men didn't even get a place on their website. And this cracks me up because he's like, we want opportunities. I saw, this proposal of Kamala Harris to like do things to help Black men. And I looked up the unemployment rate under Trump for Black men and then the current. And I'm like,
yep.
Do you want those opportunities? Do you want those wages? Do you want a legacy and inheritance for your children? You probably want to. I mean, I'm not a Trump crazy woman, but I'm like, I don't think
just look at the data.
Yeah, unemployment has ever been better, at least in the recent past, for Black men, except for the pre-pandemic Trump administration. Like Black men, in terms of employment, were doing better than they've done in decades. But you're going to buy them off, and you're going to give them pot. I mean,
well, and again. Yes, it wasn't just unemployment. Historically, Black colleges were given more funding than historically ever given before under the Trump administration. So not only are we trying to get you employed, but we're trying to give you the educational equality so that you can go get those high-paying jobs. It's not just, they're getting lower propensity jobs, whatever. They're getting high-paying jobs. They're doing well. Prosperity without, the government, lifting them up more than it needs to. And that kind of is what popped in my head because this is called the opportunity agenda for Black men. First of all, Kamala, what is a man?
Totally.
Start there.
Let's start there.
Secondly,
it's the thing that she needs to get over the finish line for a certain demographic.
Exactly.
That's what they are.
And they were counting on this vote. They don't know if they're going to get it because Trump is offering something way more, prosperous and again, kind of going back to those biological differences, men want to be providers. They don't want the government providing for them. They want to be providers. They want to take care of their kids, incentivizing them with stuff that's not going to make them a better father and not encouraging, that great behavior. Like, why would you want that?
Well, it's that immediate gratification. It's the candy that we talk about, the candy promises that are made during elections that sound really good. And I love how Jordan Peterson talks about this. I've kind of gotten obsessed with his narrative. And I know he's a near and dear friend of yours, but he's so good about talking about how like we're made to do hard things. We're made for responsibility.
Yes. Voluntarily undertaken.
Exactly. Voluntarily undertaken. And the temptation is, it sounds nice to get something free. It sounds really nice to have that immediate gratification or the high from the marijuana. But at the end of the day, what we're made for is the struggle and the tension. I even love that he talks about this in marriage, that he's like, we kind of think like we want someone that we'll just like agree with. He's like, no, you don't. You want to struggle. Like you want to have those moments where you have to kind of wrestle through hard things. Because in a way, it kind of reminds you that you're alive.
It sharpens you.
It sharpens you. It makes you a better person. You're allowed to see the other person in front of you becoming a better person. You grow together. Like that's what we're made for. And I think that's what the far left repeatedly misses, that we are made to do hard things, and there's a beautiful element of empowerment in that they just miss.
Well, and it's the connection that you're looking for to meaning. I mean, in Jordan Peterson's speak, he would say there's a direct connection with the amount of responsibility you choose to voluntarily undertake and your fulfillment and your meaning in life. And what is this? It is the soft bigotry of low expectations, right? It is the like the stealing of the opportunity for meaning and for fulfillment in an entire demographic of people. And I'll tell you what, when Black men are not doing well, Black children are not doing well.
Yep. Yeah.
Like ultimately, it is going to trickle down to generations. And, and this is how adult-centric policy works. Adult-centric policy, and what I mean by that is things that gratify adults in the immediate, but then kids have to pay the price. And it is always the question of somebody is going to do the hard thing. Who is going to do the hard thing? Is it going to be the adult men, in this case, that demographic of Black men? Are they going to do the hard thing? Are we going to create the conditions so they can voluntarily undertake the ability to do hard things, to form their families, to get a good job, so that the next generation is protected and provided for? Or are we going to force the kids to do the hard thing that the adults refuse to? And this policy is just going to offload that cost onto the next generation.
Yeah, they're incentivizing of voters isn't working here. However, when incentivizing doesn't work, shame does, right? Or or so we think. Yeah. I want to actually cue up clip 3 because, like I said, like you said, Obama got a lot of voters, and he decided to take one for the team and talk to some voters. I think in Pennsylvania. Let's hear what he has to say to a certain demographic of male voters.
And you're coming up with all kinds of reasons and excuses. I've got a problem with that because part of it makes me think, and I'm speaking to men directly now, part of it makes me think that, well, you just aren't feeling the idea of having a woman as president. And you're coming up with other alternatives and other reasons for that.
That's got to be a really effective strategy, right? The reason you're not voting the way I want you to is because you are all women-hating misogynists.
Yeah.
So this, I think, is, Virginia, what you were saying, you have an entire party that denigrates men just for being men.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you something men hate. It is being mischaracterized and demonized when at their heart, a lot of them are just good men trying to do the right thing.
Yeah.
And I think that this kind of messaging, about men in general, not just Black men, is actually responsible for the rise of what we see to be the most right-wing generation in Gen Z.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
The teens and the early 20-something boys and young men are so hardcore right-wing. Why? Because they know that one party absolutely hates them simply because of their biology.
Yeah.
It's insane. And he goes on later to kind of emasculate them further and say, when we get in trouble, women are there to bail us out. Kind of
infantilizing them.
Yeah, it's absolutely insane. And that's going back to pro-child politics. You don't want weak fathers, right?
No.
Any father that is doing what's best for their kid, no matter whatever, that's so important. I don't mean whatever, but do not talk to them like that. And in that clip, too, you can kind of see him buffering a little bit because I don't even know if he believes what he's saying. Like
saying what he feels like he has to in the
moment.
moment. Well, and there's so many, speaking as not a man, but someone who spends too much time on Instagram watching men talk about what they really value, is that idea of respect, right? That deep within a man's heart and soul, they want to be honored, they want to be respected, and that is the exact opposite of what we have seen now for years among the left that essentially has said to men, you're the problem, and for every issue that women have, it's your fault.
Yeah.
Right.
It's
But don't worry, because they made a commercial with a bunch of different guys, right?
Yeah. A mechanic and a gym bro.
Yeah, I can eat a carbonator for breakfast. Like, what are we even saying?
What are we talking
like,
about
I
here?
like beer. Okay. Those, literally, I feel like the left has attacked the right so many times for pandering in ways that appropriate cultures. Is that not?
Gosh,
Maybe I'm
yes.
going too far there. But
Well, no, there's certainly here an element that people have brought up of this feels very racist to be, saying, okay, specifically to Black men, we're going to offer this. Because the litmus test for me is always, okay, you just replace it with a different demographic. You replace it with white men or Jewish men, or doesn't matter. You just insert any demographic, and if it rubs you the wrong way, it's like, all right, why are we doing it for this group and not for this group?
Yep,
just
that's
weird.
pretty good.
It's very weird. Well, I feel like we're hitting these major fiery button issues, and among the two top issues that have rotated this election, economic issues like we're seeing here, promises, financial gains, concerns over inflation, and the border. And it hasn't been published yet. I recently wrote a piece on kids being the greatest, really, losers of our border crisis because of the exploitation that happens at the border, the travel to the border, the trafficking we know, the cartels, the rates of trafficking increasing specifically under the Biden administration. And it's not hard to see why that happened, because you increase numbers, there's going to be an increase in trafficking. And, we learned in 2023, I believe I'm saying that right, that there was 85,000 children that we just didn't know where they were, illegal alien children that were somewhere in the U.S. We now know that that's over 100,000. And as we have seen the rates just increase at the border, we're seeing, okay, there's more and more kids coming in, they're disappearing, and there's a lot of reasons for why kids are exploited. There's a lot of loopholes in U.S. law that allow for kids to be exploited. Unintentional. It's unintentional consequences, the best intentions, but maybe really problems that have not been fixed, maybe. But this issue of specifically kids and the border is really, really huge this election. And I'm not sure some people are talking about the trafficking side, but that element, if for no other reason you should want the border to be closed, it should be to protect vulnerable children.
So in pro-child politics, we had Laura Reese here at the Heritage Foundation write our immigration chapter, and it is the one that I feel like I cite and quote the most because it is so top of the news these days, and it deserves to be, because what we are seeing is child victimization on an unimaginable scale, really. Why is that? It really is not just because we've got people coming over the border. It is because this current administration has incentivized unaccompanied children coming over the border. And just like the marriage and family issue, when children are separated from their mother or father, they are vulnerable children. And the current practice, the current border policy encourages children to come across the border without their mother and father. That means there are children coming across the border unprotected, completely susceptible to coyotes, to traffickers, to supposed sponsors who then will move them into an unregulated labor market. What is going on right now at the border is utterly criminal, not just for the children who live in this country right now, whose resources and first responder, budgets are being redirected to communities that nobody voted to have there, but also because of the immigrant children coming across the border who are being so horribly victimized. And many of them are disappearing into the seedy underworld of sex trafficking. And we're never going to know about them. We're never going to find them. We're never going to track them down. We're never going to even know their name because we didn't bother asking. We didn't have a system to even log them. And it's there was all kinds of weeping and caterwauling about kids in cages. And what this administration has chosen to do is they didn't want the bad optics of supposed kids in cages. So instead they said, let's give them to the traffickers instead, because that's better for our financial, our political optics. Profile.
There's not a slogan that they can throw on that. However, it's really sad. And I had to read this Breitbart article where they highlighted Bob's House of Hope in Denton, Texas. And there, his name's Landon Dickinson. He is the executive director, and he talked about how some of these kids come to him. This is a recovery for those who've been sexually trafficked or just trafficked in general, and they're tortured, and especially the men, right? So really huge demographic, right? For this election, but the men have been tortured, things that can't even be discussed, and they're different. They have brain damage, he explained, because of the trauma and just injuries that have been,
physical, mental, emotional.
Yeah, exactly, and that's not what we're hearing about. We're not hearing about that. We're hearing about how, those in Texas, those people that don't support an open border are, bigots and whatever slur you want to say.
Racist, white supremacists.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's obscene. Honestly, get out of your chair and get angry.
And you know who just got angry? Not to pivot really hard, but because this is a horrible thing going on. However, some people are maybe waking up to it. Bill Clinton was in Georgia, actually. So let's hear what he had to say. Cue the next clip for us.
Kill the bill. The bill was being written by senior Republicans in the Senate, and he killed the bill. Why? You had a case in Georgia not very long ago, didn't you? They made an ad about a young woman who'd been killed by an immigrant. Yeah, well, if they'd all been properly vetted, that probably wouldn't have happened.
Oh, you don't say.
If you don't say, if they'd all been properly vetted, Lake and Riley would still be alive.
Right, because American children
Accurate.
are also suffering, obviously.
right.
And I mean, Virginia, you're our border expert here. Obviously, that bill did very little to, limit some of the problems.
And the one bill that would do so much is H.R. 2 that the House passed over a year ago. The Senate has not taken it up, but that bill would specifically, I asked Laura Reese about it during the event this morning, would specifically close loopholes that are allowing for the exploitation of children within the country. And I think it's important to note that when we say kids and kids arriving at the border, I think it can be confusing to be like, wait, how is a 5-year-old winding up at the border alone? Well, there are instances where that's happening, but the majority, 81% of the UAC's unaccompanied illegal alien children arriving at our southern border are between the ages of 13 and 18. And the average age of a trafficking victim is between the age of 12 and 15. So they fall right in that slot. These are young people that are able to be, we've seen the New York Times, I have to give them a shout out because they actually did phenomenal reporting on this, where they blew the lid off of kids working, long hours in the middle of the night, packing Cheerios into boxes and working at chicken packing factories. Just insane stuff that you would scratch your head and say, how on earth is this happening in our country? But it is. It's going on every single day. And these are kids because they were turned over to a sponsor. The process goes, they cross the border, they enter the custody of DHS, Department of Homeland Security. DHS then has to hand them over to HHS, Health and Human Services, all the acronyms. And then Health and Human Services, they place that kid with a sponsor. A sponsor can be anyone, doesn't have to be a family member. There is very little vetting that's done. There's like one kind of like cursory background check, but we don't know who else is living in the household of that sponsor that they're released to. After that kid is released, there's a phone call like within a month that's made to the household to say, hey, is everything good? If they can't reach that family, too bad.
Right.
They don't have capacity to go and check on every single one of these households. So when you hear those numbers of X number of kids lost within the U.S., that's what we mean by lost is the government no longer really knows their status. Yeah. And so it's a perfect avenue for traffickers, for human smugglers, for the cartels to say, okay, we want cheap labor, we want free labor. Well, we will incentivize, because we know if a child shows up on the border alone and they're not from Canada and they're not from Mexico, they will be released into the interior of the United States. No questions asked. Well, then those traffickers, those same people can say, I'll be a sponsor for that child. Or, hey, my uncle or my cousin, they don't have a criminal record. I'll have them volunteer to be a sponsor. And then I'll get this kid working late, earning wages, lining my pockets, getting involved in sex trafficking, whatever it may be. And it has created this incredible, vulnerable pipeline for kids.
Yeah. And it is happening.
It is happening.
There's a
documented proof.
There was a federal whistleblower that said her agency sent 329 kids to the same apartment complex. What connect those dots? It was in Houston, Texas. We're taking.
Remember those stats about children living with unrelated cohabiting adults? Yeah. What do you think that is when those adults have no familial? They're not even connected to the child's biological parent. Right. What do you think's going on?
Yep.
I just want to rip this microphone apart. Why aren't?
But Katie, I'm so thankful for people like you that have said, I will give my life to be a voice for the kids that don't have a voice and that are overlooked on policy topics. And I will say the part that is not popular to say, because so many of these topics we've hit on, people say what's popular, or they stay quiet because it's not popular to say certain things. Or I think
that a lot of people don't understand.
Or they don't understand.
That there really is very real, terrifying things being done to victims, and those victims are kids. Yeah. To me, that is what gets me off the couch. Yeah. Like if I'm like, debt in the, did you say billions or trillions? I don't know. Like it doesn't even compute for me. But you tell me that a child today is going to be born and owe $78,000. The day that they're born, on debt that they did not agree to and that they're never going to benefit from. And that's going to be close to $250,000 by the time they're getting married and starting their own family. I mean, you're stealing opportunities from them. Yeah. You're stealing, resources from them because we refused to just put the brakes on our massive spending. And I mean, in that sense, both parties are pretty guilty as well.
Fair.
So I just... Yeah, to me, it's like it's very, very helpful to take it out of the theoretical and put it into the very practical and tangible. I know I'm so grateful for the people that can just look at the numbers and be like, this is horrible. I have to be like, tell me the story of the kid who was hurt. And then I'll get off the couch and into the voting booth, and then I'll be willing to lose friends. Totally. But it really does take connecting those dots for me.
Yeah. Well, I think many Americans are like that too. Stories are powerful.
Yeah.
They really, really mobilize us. And throughout history, we know that to be true.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to lighten it up a little bit in just a moment with a game.
This
Take
is
a breath.
the game where I reveal myself as a total failure.
Not at all. But first, if you are looking for another great way to keep up with the news every single day, you say, yes, Problem Equipment is great, but I want that daily dose. Just hit me with more and more news. Then you need to sign up for the Daily Signal's Morning Bell email newsletter. You can sign up on the Daily Signal website, and every single morning, right to your inbox, we're going to send you like 5 or 6 of the top news stories of the day, conservative news, commentary, right to your inbox that you can stay up to speed on what's happening. And specifically, these are stories that we are putting in Morning Bell because we think they are of particular interest to our conservative audience. So go on the Daily Signal website, dailysignal.com, and you can hit that subscribe button to sign up for the Morning Bell email newsletter.
Little plug for that. It's not overwhelming. You know what I mean? Like sometimes you get the regular thing and you're like, you're scrolling, you're like, when does it end? Stop
giving the information.
Stop. And so it's very tailored, it's very direct, it's kind of top of the news, but it also intersects with the things that we really care about. So highly recommend.
That was like a live time review. I love
know.
it.
Yeah.
I didn't pay her to say that at all, guys. Totally
but I'm going to be back weekly and with spot it. No.
And our sponsor. Right. And you can pick up your copy of Katie's book.
Oh, man. No, but I mean, we've talked about a ton of issues today. And it is, I mean, very interesting how you can tie everything back to the victim that is ultimately the child. Like, not a plug, but also a plug for the pro-child politic books. You can kind of see how all of that overlaps. However, you know, a lot of these campaign issues, campaign promises, if you will, we've heard them before, or, you know, we all get a little jaded because we've heard them. We've heard them before. Or maybe we haven't. But Virginia and I spent some time and we actually went through some of, I mean, mine are kind of crazy. I don't know if yours are crazy, but some historical campaign promises. Yes. And we might have also made up our own.
Mine are all from presidential they could be real, they could be fake. Mine are all from presidential candidates
throughout
campaigns. History. So this isn't necessarily this cycle.
So we're playing real or not.
Real or fake campaign promise.
Campaign promises.
Okay.
Yes.
You go first.
Okay, yes, I will go first. All right.
Yeah, I don't know Kristen, she doesn't know mine.
No, yeah. So both of you have to guess.
Okay.
All right. Because we're not going to put a lot of coal miners and because we're going to put a lot of coal miners and coal companies out of business. That is the crazy campaign promise.
I think yes, that's true.
Ooh,
and my guess is that was. Oh, well.
No, if you know who it is,
have a guess.
Guess who it is. That's kind of fun. Let's do that too.
That. Yeah.
Was it Obama? I feel like that's kind of when it began.
Yeah.
That whole fossil fuel, when it was acceptable to start saying it.
I don't know. Saying that.
Yeah, to hate on coal miners.
I don't know that, I feel like Biden would have been more careful. I can't.
Yeah, he's from Pennsylvania too, so he gets it. Well,
yeah.
Joseph, can we cue it up? I clipped it.
Yeah.
So we can check
before us. Oh God.
Yeah.
Clip.
It's not Bill Clinton.
We got the receipts.
We got some receipts.
Oh. Because we're going to put a lot of coal miners and coal companies out of business. Right, Tim? And we're going to make it clear that we don't want to forget those people.
Of course it was Hillary.
Yeah.
Oh,
Close, though.
gosh.
Close, though. She was friends with Obama.
All right. Okay. I got one here.
We'll switch off. Yeah.
So real or fake? Read my lips, no new taxes.
Oh,
Georgie George.
Yes.
Yeah, that was Georgie George. That was George H.W. Bush in 1988.
Nice. Did he deliver?
No, there were new taxes. Yeah.
We do have a chapter on taxes in Pro-Child Politics where Grover Norquist outlines, he's just like, lie. I mean, most of the authors had like 3 lies. And he's like, here's the 87 lies about taxes. But a lot of it is there'll be no new taxes. Right, and if there is, somebody else will pay for it. It's never you.
Yeah.
And they're like, they all lie.
They all lie. There will always be more taxes.
And that's that's the beauty of government, right? We've got our 3 branches, so it is hard to make those types of promises. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, that's the thing is he was under pressure from Congress to agree, and
But
President
all right,
is a solo ship.
Next campaign promise: energy independence without the Green New Deal is American independence.
Energy independence without the Green New Deal.
Yes. I know, it's kind of funky how it's worded.
Yeah, it's very funky how it's worded. Energy independence without the Green New Deal is, what's the second part?
American independence.
Is American independence.
That's a good phrase.
Yeah.
It doesn't sound super familiar, but it would have been a good idea.
Who would have said that? I feel like this was probably
it's relatively recent,
yeah,
right?
5 or so years ago, probably said. I don't see Trump saying.
I wonder if it's fake and you've adulterated this somehow.
Perhaps.
You've tweaked just one word.
1 or 2 words.
And it's like opposite land that we're living in here.
No, I didn't. No, I wouldn't do that.
I wouldn't do that. And these are things that only the president, not VPs, said.
Presidential candidates have said this.
Yes. Oh, well, he did run for president. It's not Mike Pence, is it? He did run for president. Nope. No.
It sounds real. I don't know who would have said it.
No. It's fake. It's fake. I came up with it. Maybe that should be my presidential race promise.
No, it's a little wordy.
It is a little... I know. Okay, so Virginia's going to workshop it for me.
If it takes 2 of us to be like, what does that even mean?
Well, I felt like jargony enough for it to maybe
It was very jargony. Good job.
Okay, I'm glad.
All right. Okay. The era of big government is over. The era of big government is over. Era.
Ah,
yes, I'll pronounce it. The era of big government is over.
Big government is over.
Is over.
I don't know. Would it be a Reagan?
I think it's fake.
You think it's fake? You think it's Reagan?
I think it sounds like Trump, but I think it's fake.
It was Bill Clinton.
Stop it.
Bill Clinton trying to appeal to the right in 1996.
Just like he is right now.
Yeah. No kidding.
Good old Bill.
Wow.
Never know. But we all wish that the era of big government would have ended with Bill Clinton.
Yeah.
But
a long time ago.
Alas.
Wow.
Most certainly did not.
I'm shook. Okay.
Shooketh.
This one's a little shorter. I'll never tell a lie.
Oh. Was that Nixon?
Is it Clinton Part 2? No.
Was it Nixon? No.
But you think it's real?
I think it's real.
It could be. I mean, no, I'm just kidding.
It's not Washington, is it?
No.
Oh.
Although I think technically he said that, yeah?
In some
Yeah.
form.
Yeah.
And I would believe him.
Okay. So do we think it's real or not?
I think it's real.
Okay. Any guesses on who? It's going to stump you.
I already gave my guess. I thought it was Nixon.
That was a good guess.
Thanks.
No. Just
All right.
reveal.
Let's reveal it.
Okay,
All right.
Give me the reveal.
Oh,
Clip
wow.
number, I don't know what we're on.
You're so good in bringing clips.
Decency.
I'll never tell a lie. I'll never make a misleading statement.
Oh, Carter.
Oh.
Jimmy Carter.
Jimmy Carter.
Well, Georgia boy.
Did he keep his promise?
He's a pretty
honest guy,
yeah,
right?
he came after Nixon and after, kind of all of the craziness. And he was a pretty, I watched a documentary. He's not my favorite president,
Sure.
but he definitely was better than a lot.
to be honest.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely
yeah.
does, which I commend.
That is very commendable. All right. Every American will have the chance to own their own home under my administration.
Interesting. That's a good thing. Sorry, I
It
didn't mean to
is,
scoff.
and I would say that's true. It sounds like something that somebody would say at the right time.
Yes.
But when?
Is it Kamala?
I made it up.
Good job, Virginia.
Thank you.
Stumped
You
us.
but
are the branding
it
girls.
sounds
Yeah.
like something that
Good
Kamala would
job.
say,
Yeah.
doesn't it?
No, someone.
Well, because she's talked about giving $25,000
Yeah,
right.
down payment loans. And
Yeah.
It's like-
Okay. Last
Last one.
You got
for
me.
all the marbles.
For all the marbles.
We're gonna keep Guantanamo Bay open and load it up.
Trump.
Duh. I'm sorry, I had to end on that one.
Wow.
Can we cue the music, please?
You are unearthing some gems here.
It was too funny.
A month. I think we have, what do we have left in there? Like 100 people or something? So we're spending $40 million. I would guarantee you that I could do it for a tiny I don't mean like 39. I mean
so
like
Trump.
maybe 5.
I think he said it
Maybe.
earlier in this. We'll have to reclip it.
Talking about Gitmo, right? Guantanamo Bay.
There we
which
go.
by the way, we are keeping open. which we are keeping on. And we're going to load it up with some bad dudes. Believe me, we're going to load it up.
There we go. We're going to load it up.
I feel like that is like, should be the second verse to, we're eating dogs. Load them up. Load it up, you know?
Someone needs to do like a remix song.
Yes.
Oh my God.
That was good. You guys...
Yeah, no, you're
okay.
very sweet. I completely failed, but that's very nice of you to try to paper over my horrifying loss.
Well, honestly, though, I think it's more indicative of the fact that politicians all sound the same.
Yeah,
they
and you're
make
fighting for a
promises.
cause. You
That's
know
right.
your stuff. That's more important.
Tell us, Katy. Tell us. I am going to say, put your pitch in for all of your books. How do we follow you? How do we follow your work?
Yeah, you should follow our work. You should come to thembeforeus.com. You should subscribe. You should support us. Everyone's like, what are you trying to do? And I'm like, global takeover.
Casual.
Yeah, and we will. Like, we are going to, if I have my way, we're going to center the child in every conversation, the personal and the political, the cultural and the courtrooms. I get angry when kids are victimized because adults refuse to do the right thing and the hard thing.
It's righteous anger.
And it's an injustice.
Yeah.
It's an injustice at the individual level and at the national level. So that's what we're after. You know, we've got lots of projects and manifestations. You know, the books, Pro-Child Politics is an awesome tool. Pre-election, but also like we wanted to shape an electorate, not just an election. We want everybody to think, what if we put kids first? And the amazing thing is when you do, you get great policy. It is the connective tissue that I think unites all of the different causes that conservatives historically care about. And it's pretty fantastic that under that child protective roof, you get the cultural, the economic, and the national policy conservatives all happy and fellowshipping together. So I really do think that this should be the unifying narrative. The other side has a unifying narrative, and it's equity. I think ours should be child protection.
Ooh, I love it.
Powerful.
That's great.
Katy, thank you. Always
Yeah.
a joy
Fun
to
to
see
be
you.
with other problematic women.
Amen.
Yeah.
Amen.
Yes.
Well, for all of our problematic women watching, listening, make sure that you hit that subscribe button so you never miss out on new shows of problematic women. And if you would, take us a minute to leave us a rating, a review. We would love to know what you think about the show and to hear your feedback. So we will see you right back here once again next Wednesday on YouTube, Rumble, and then if you listen to audio only, we go live on Thursday mornings. We'll see you next week. Have a great weekend.